Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Tryon. Welcome to our very first Watercolor Wednesdays. Free watercolor class every Wednesday in June. Thank you so much for being here. I'm seeing lots of people, friendly, familiar faces, well, names in the chat. I can see them go by. I've got a big screen in front of me here so I can see who's on. This is meant to be a live and interactive experience. So please, if you have a question or you'd like to speak to me face to face, we are using technology, in the best way we can to be together, even though we're virtual. So we'll put a link in the comments. You can click it if you would like to speak to me face to face and have a question for me about watercolor tonight. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Even if you don't have the kit, maybe you have your own paints, or maybe you're just tuning in for a little inspiration or entertainment. Let's see if this person that we've seen sewing can really paint. I love all the crafty things. So please tell me where you are joining in from tonight. I see my sisters and my mom, so that's good. I see some friends on here, and I see lots of sewers on here who are taking a bit of a leap tonight and trying something a little bit different. Oh, good. We've got from Donna from Oshawa. We see Tanya from Calgary. Madison, Wisconsin. They're going by so fast. Charleston, we've got Sherry Miller in. Susan, hi Susan. Annette from Sarnia, from Chelsea, Quebec. Wow, this is great. We've got such a far and wide. And hey, deep in Scarborough. Hey, all right, represent. We're right there with you. We are broadcasting from Markham, Ontario, which is just like, it's Toronto, Ontario, suburb of Toronto, in my basement. Studio. Sometimes I'm painting, sometimes I'm sewing, sometimes I'm doing all kind cricketing, paper crafting. We love all the things around here. So let me know how you got connected, along with where you're tuning in from, because I know some of you watched the segment we did this week on the morning show where we, teased a little bit of Watercolor Wednesdays, and some are watching because they are homemade fans and they love all the homemade events. So if you're a first timer to any of our classes, welcome. This is sort of what we do. We kind of like hang out live. If you want to join in, you can. There'll be a link in the comments. All you have to do is click it, type your name in, and make sure you turn your camera and stuff on. That tends to be a stumbling block. And we can have a little chat. Lots of people, lots of first timers and lots of veterans. So I'm pleased if you've been in a homemade event before, let's make all the new people feel welcome. Before we get going, let me just see. I hope you got your kit. Kits went out last week, and if there was any issue with your kit, please email info@homemade.ca. This class is totally free, and some people, though, wanted to be able to paint with exactly the supplies that I'm using here, and so we sent them a kit. We don't have any kits left. We do have some supplies left. In fact, a lot of supplies. What we're missing is just a couple of things, not much. So we did put up a mini kit. So if you're watching tonight and we open and you're kind of regretting not having the stuff, and you want to go ahead and get a mini kit, go ahead. We'll send it out to you right away, and you'll be able to follow along for the rest of the weeks. If you don't have the stuff, you're still free to watch and learn and use your own. Let me see. The kits are sold out. Any chance there may be more available? Yeah, Karen. So the main kits are sold out, but if you go down the drop menu, let me just try to log in here and see if I can walk you through.
Katie's put the link
Okay, great. Because if you go to market.homemade.ca, and I'm just going to type in water and see if it. Oh, look, the iron comes up and the water. Anything that takes water. So the free class, obviously, you can register for that, and that's just so that we had your email and then we could send you the link. And then this is send me the kit. This is sold out. So if you go to it, it'll say, maybe we have, no, I don't think we have any left. Tomorrow's looking at me like, don't tell people we have it. We don't. But it's not that we don't have the whole thing. We just are missing the aqua pastels and a couple of the art liner markers. We'll show you. So it's almost the full kit that you can get in the mini kit. And the mini kit is $99. So if you want the mini kit, there it is. But let's open it up and so that we can get to the actual watercoloring because we want to get going. So here's our box. Let's be a rainbow in someone else's cloud. I thought that was kind of cute and fitting and bright and cheery. And the first thing you should see, how many people are opening it for the first time? Or how many people have already dived in? That maybe should dictate how quickly or fast I go. We have a little welcome, and then on here, it's showing you what's coming in your kit. So we've got the custom stamp. Well, we'll get to it. Why don't we just set that aside? But I do want to point out on the back side, it has a little calendar of what we're going to be doing. So week 1, that's tonight. We're going to do this box opening. Sorry, it's hard to read like this, but I'll hold it up as best I can. We're going to create a legend with our colors that we've got in our box because it really is great to have what we call like a color chart like this so you know what the colors look like. So we're going to be making one of these tonight. We're going to be doing some stamping for watercoloring so that we can be creating by the end of tonight. Here's the thing. I want you guys to be like successful. And, you know, we might not be watercolor artists right away, but by the end of tonight, you'll have painted something like this. That's pretty good for night 1, right? Karen, who's behind the camera, is going, that is good. I see her nodding like, wow, hey. She's only seen it. She's like, I'm impressed. You will be doing this by the end of tonight. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to turn those into cards. And then week 2, so next week, We're going to do some backgrounds. We're going to do a day and night park bench project. Week 3, we're going to apply a bit of that background to the lighthouse project, and we're going to start doing a little bit more realistic painting. Week 4, we're going to paint faces and use watercolor for portraits. And week 5 is when you're going to start getting into some of what I've got beside me here. And that is the freehand florals. Now, as we go, I'm going to leave you with a little bit of homework every week to try to start building some of that muscle memory. But I just wanted to kind of go through what some of the stuff that you are going to be able to practice doing. This is my big, thick file of like, you know, paintings basically that I've just been like practicing with over the years. And, you know, with the markers that come in your kit, you'll be able to do this. I did a little family portrait out of watercolor. The subscription box is coming, and it does have a few more watercolor things in it. So not to worry, though. Not to worry. It's on its way.
She's wondering if it's too late to order a box.
A subscription box?
A watercolor box.
No, you can order the mini kit. Absolutely. So just go ahead and you can order the mini kit. I just wanted to show you by the end of the month, you'll be doing these no problem. No problem at all. I did this little one for, well, this is what I actually did these paintings for. These are some of the originals from a paper pad that I had published with Spectrum Noir a couple years ago. And we actually published a lot of these watercolor drawings in, see, this is this one right here. And this was for a brush lettering kit. See, this is the original that I painted on the watercolor paper. And then this is what we gave people as card fronts. And we published this paper pad, and we sold this on HSN in the US. And this was so, this was like, I couldn't believe I did this. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. This was like so fun. Sold out very fast, which was a very proud moment. But I held on to the one and only copy, and I, you know, because you can't get them anymore. But I do still have the originals, and that's them here. And you will end up with a big thick binder like this too, or folder of all of your test drawings, and you'll see how far you've come, and you'll end up with lots of practice sheets like this that are just sort of like, yeah, good, not good, like testing out some rosebuds and seeing what it looks like in bunches. A lot of watercoloring is really about the practicing, and less so about the, you know, the final product. Like, you know, I'm just practicing leaves, practicing, you know, muscle memory, practicing the strokes. So remember that as you're going along in these weeks, to be, you know, pulling out some paper. Maybe you want to get a bigger paper pad, or just a book, like a watercolor book that you can just practice in, and it stays like in that pad. Okay, let's open up the kit, because there's lots of stuff in here. Okay. First thing you're probably seeing is the little watercolor commemorative pin. In all of our event boxes, or most of them anyway, we try to put like a little pin, and I thought this was just the cutest. Kind of looks like the stamp that's in the set. And of course, it's got a watercolor kind of puddly blob on there, and with homemade. So I hope you love that little pin, just a little cute. Yeah. You've got a paint palette. We'll be using that. Of course, you've got a candy, because we probably need a little bit of sugar just to keep us all going. A little bit of sugar. You've got 3 water brushes here. Now, what you're going to do with these, oh, I should tell you right now, if you haven't gotten some jars or bowls or something of clean water, go and get them while I'm unboxing here. If you don't need to see that, get some water and get some paper towel. And I kind of like to put the paper towel like one near me and then one under each of my bowls or jars, so I can dip it, like swatch it off right away.
Will the mini kits have a pin in it as well?
The mini kits will have a pin. Yes, they will. The mini kits will have everything except for these, which are the aqua pastels. We're completely sold out of these. And then the art liner markers, you won't have a full pack because we don't have any more full packs. Instead, we'll just give you 1 or 2. I think it's probably, we have enough to give you 1 marker. You really only need 1 pen. The main kit got a whole pack. And you're missing from the, if you're going to get the mini kit, you won't have this paper pad, which is the painting faces, where we're going to be doing the portraits. But we may do something like where you can print it out, or we'll print some out on watercolor so you have something to paint for faces. You just won't have that full pad. So that's what's missing. Other than that, everything else is still available. So you're really getting most of the stuff, just not that. Okay, so you've got brushes. And what I love about these brushes, this kit, is that when you're watercoloring, you really want to use a round tip brush. So this is a good example of a round tip brush. Let me hold it up here so you can see it. Come on, focus. All right. So you can see it's rounded at the end, even though it kind of looks pointy. This is a round tip brush. And what you get with a round tip brush is sort of, it's only kind of round this way. It still looks pointy this way, but it definitely is round. And in this pack, you're getting 3 round and 3 flat. So the flats are great for doing backgrounds or certain kinds of more angular leaves or petals. But for the most part, we're going to be using the round tip brush. So if you don't have this kit and you're shopping for brushes, or you're pulling brushes out of your stash, look for one that looks like this, that has a point and a round tip, because that's a watercolor brush. And then also in your kit, you've got some water brushes. Now these are 3 different sizes, and these are great if you're traveling. And what you do here is you open them up. Now I want to warn you, these are counterintuitive. You're going to try to open it and turn it like you turn it the wrong way to open it. I don't know why, but it took me about 10 minutes to open the first one of these. I came into tomorrow, try to open this. Oh my gosh, what if all of them don't open? We're sending them in the kits. And then we just turned it the other way. And I was like, oh, right. Anyway, you can just put this under your tap, or I'm just going to dunk it in this jar since it's clean. But you're going to want to fill the barrel and then screw it back on. Wrong way. It's like totally messes with my mind. And then you can just give the barrel a little squeeze and that'll activate it. And the water will come out the tip. I don't know why I'm using my hand, but I always seem to use my hand instead of a paper towel. But the water will come out the tip. Now you still do need to rinse off these brushes so that it doesn't end up sucking up the paint or the dirty water into the barrel. But these are great if you're traveling or wanting to watercolor like outside in the backyard, or, at a kid's baseball game, or we've done lots of that kind of thing where you don't want to bring an entire jar of water. You can just bring your water brush, and it gives you sometimes a little more control. It's just another thing to try. So you've got 3 different tips with the water brushes here. So that's great. You've got a large, a medium, and a small, and they're all round. Don't forget these little things. You might be wondering, what is that? Is that paint? This is adhesive. These are just little glue dots, because we're going to make some cards tonight. Remember I said you'd be making something that looked like this. You can stick those glue dots on the back, because in the kit, we've also given you a bunch of pre-folded cards and envelopes, so that right away you could send this to a girlfriend or your friend or your mom or someone to say, these flowers are for you. And yeah, so you've got that in your kit. And then of course the star of the show is this little set right here. I love this little paint set so much. The pigments are really, really great. So you're going to get it out of the box here. Come on. Open it up, and yours will be all wrapped up like this. So you'll have like this little swatch card here that's all blank. And then you're going to have all of your little paints in what look like little pieces of Hubba Bubba gum all wrapped up. That's what it seems like. You need to start unwrapping these right away. So listen to me talk and start unwrapping all of your little paints. Or if you've got paints already going at home, what I like to suggest, this isn't in your kit, but if you have a little bit of water, you can activate them. Or if you have like a little mister bottle, like a little water spray bottle, you could give your paint palette a little squirt with water. I set mine up here somewhere, but it's like kind of clear. So what did I do? Oh, no. We're all look. Oh, there it is. This is what happens. These need to be like colored. Anyway, this is just a little water bottle. Maybe you have one that you keep on the ironing board or something like that. But a little spray bottle, if you are watching at home with your own kit, is a great way to like bring your paints to life. The water does not hurt the paints. You can leave it on there, let it dry, reactivate it, spray it again. This is just gonna like get it warmed up while we warm up. So that's good. That's your little paint palette. Make sure you're unwrapping them all. And then that's what you're going to be left with is all of these great colors. And you can use the lid for mixing colors and coming up with new colors. Also for just diluting colors. You can see those were old colors that were there. Just that little mister bottle is enough to just reactivate. So you can use the lid, or of course you can use your paint palette or your paint palette that came in your kit. Or if you've just got a ceramic plate at home, or not a paper plate, but like a plastic disposable plate, that works perfectly. These little paint palettes aren't very expensive. You can find them kind of everywhere. I like to put some paint in them, but I also like to put some water. So if I was putting this under the tap, I would fill a couple of these with water because they're shallow, which means I can kind of like swirl them with a bunch of different colors. All right, let's get through the kit before I, in your kit, you've got 2 custom homemade stamp sets. Yes, I drew these. This was so exciting, you guys. These are my very first stamps that I've ever had made. Well, not really. I did do a line with Spectrum Noir, but these are the first ones I ever made for homemade. So I'm feeling pretty special that you guys are getting them. So you've got the violets one and you've got the roses one. So you can work with either of these tonight or both or one or whatever you like. Yeah, so I'll just set those aside for right now. You've also got a custom stamp block. You can see the homemade stamp block. This, if you're new to stamping, you'll see when we get to that part of the class. I'm just going to put the stamp on this block so we can get our image down on our watercolor paper. The other thing you've got in the kit is you've got a little bit of washi tape. Everybody got a different color. And that's in case you want to tape your watercolor paper down to, say, a clipboard. So that the paper isn't moving, but instead you're moving the clipboard, or you want to bring that clipboard with you somewhere, you can set it down. It also allows you to have like a white border around the edges of your watercolor paper. Or when we get to backgrounds, if you put the washi tape in sort of a funny design everywhere, then it'll resist. So we'll get to that next week with backgrounds. Let's just get through the kit here. You've got a bunch of watercolor paper in the bottom. You've also got some watercolor paper that we have printed on. And the printouts are important, especially for next week during the backgrounds lesson. You've got a couple park benches. You'll see one of them has a lamppost, one of them doesn't, because we're doing a daytime and a nighttime, just to kind of get the feel for blending out different colors. And then same when we get to the lighthouse project. The lighthouse, you can see there'll be all kinds of opportunity to maybe put some like yellow through here, but maybe a night sky down here. And that's what we'll get to in the weeks to come. You've got lots of cards and envelopes I mentioned. And then the last thing in here is your waterproof ink. This is critical when we're stamping because you do not want your regular ink to smear or blend. So waterproof ink, this is the Finesse by Spectrum Noir. So it's great. Okay. All right. I think we made it through it all. I'm going to give part of this kit to my sweet daughter, Ruby, who is standing by in the wings, who registered for Watercolor Wednesdays herself. And didn't you, Rube? Yeah. Yes. And let me give you a little kit. And you can get going. I'll give you this one. I'm certain you want the candy. Yeah. Yes, that's what you're really waiting for, I'm sure. Ruby? Partially true. Now, go be a rainbow. Oh, I better take the brushes. Be a rainbow in someone else's cloud. Get what that means? What? Just be nice.
You put her on the spot.
I have that quote in my room.
Oh, good. You have that quote in your room. Maybe that's where I got it from.
took it from that.
All right. So in your little paint palette, you've got from James Davenport, you've got a paint till you faint color swatch. But you also could take one of your pieces of watercolor paper, just a blank one. Let's get both of those ready and let's start doing a little swatch. This is what it'll look like when it's done. Basically, we just want something to know what our colors are going to look like. Because when you look at the paint palette on its own, so if you've got paints at home and you don't have one of these color charts for it, you should make one because it really does look different. Look at the difference between the green right here and the green, oh, my finger's not on it, and the green right here. Like it's a big difference. And some of the greens that are on the bottom row, you can see, you know, it's hard to tell just on the actual paint itself what it looks like because it's so heavily pigmented. And what we're going to try to achieve in the color chart is a little bit of dilution so that you can see it very pigmented to almost translucent. And that's really the beauty of watercolor. And that's what sort of gives it that look, is being able to go very, very light, from very, very dark to very, very light. So if you've got your paint palette open, let's just start with the first one, which is this green one here. Let's get a little bit of water on our brush. So this is how you start. You know, we're going to start with the very basics. I'm going to bring this water a little closer to me. So when you're dipping in, always kind of, you know, tap off. That's why you want to have some paper towel right close by. Let's activate our colors. So if you don't have a mister bottle or like a little spray bottle of water, just put a little, like, just get your paints a little wet. They don't need to be sopping wet, just a little bit wet. And rinse off your brush after. We don't need the one color running into another color. If that happens, it's not the end of the world. You can touch it with some paper towel, or you can just literally get your brush on it. If a little bit of green goes on the blue, just pick it up with your brush and smear it off or rinse it off. Watercolor is so forgiving that you're gonna find that you can make a lot of mistakes and no one will ever know. It's great. This is why I love watercolor so much. You do not need to be an artist to really do well at watercolor. So let's go through the very first one here. If we've got our inks sort of activated. How are we doing out there, Tamara?
I think everyone's
just watching. Okay, good. All right, that's good. I like to keep 2 jars of water because I can kind of put some dark colors and light colors or dirty water. And then like if I need some really clean water, if we're going in for something. So just keep that in mind when you're setting yourself up for watercolor. I'm going to just have another paper towel right beside me because, you know. All right. Let's get that first. Let's get that first green down. It's called Water Spirit. So I'm picking it up and I'm going to just go, I'll just zoom in right close here so you guys can see. So with the tip of my brush, I'm just going to make sure I don't have too much water on there. With the tip of my brush, and the paint should look not water, it shouldn't look super watery. It should look creamy. Should look kind of creamy on the palette. Let me just make that a little bit lighter because it kind of looks like dark. So just a second. Can you see it better now? Yeah. It should look creamy on the palette. So that's a good example, creamy. And let's just do a stripe down our first block. And that looks almost opaque, like regular paint. But that's probably as far as I want to go. And now I'm going to rinse my brush off, tap off the water, and then tap off the water. I'm not going back for more water, but instead I'm just going to pull that paint over about halfway. I'm going to rinse off my brush again. And with my clean water, I'm going to start on this side, on the right, and go towards it. And watch what happens. It's going to meet it. See how it's just kind of picking it up there? And if you've got too much, I like to keep a little corner of paper towel. If you've got too much, you can just pick it right up. This is why watercolor is so forgiving. If you've got too much water, just pick it up with the corner of the paper towel and just use a little less water on your brush next time. And then look at how that one green is essentially offering you all of these different shades. Amazing. All right, cleaning off my brush, and now I'm going to go for the green next door called Sylph. I got to tell you, the names of these paints are right out there. You'll never, I mean, I don't even know what Sylph is. Anyone? All right, this looks actually a little too watery, so I'm going to just even pick it up from my actual paint. Take a little water off my brush. There we go, a little creamier. And now let's just get one line down that looks opaque. Now I'm just going to rinse off my brush, just tapping off the extra water. And let's just pull that right over. See how light and translucent we can get it. And I'm holding it like I would hold a pencil, but not right down at the tip, sort of just above the metal. And just so I have like enough control. And see how it's sort of the gradient of color there. And I don't want to keep going over it back and forth. Just pull it out the one time so you can see the color grade. All right, next up. Nereid or Nereid. It's blue. Nice and creamy. Opaque here. And then rinse. And then I'm just going to pull, look at that pulling out. And if we want to have it reach the entire block, just get a feel for how it moves. Watercolor is one of those things, it's only going to spread where there's wet on the page. So it's not going to go to any of those dry areas. It's going to stay puddling right in wherever there's water. So let's just try and experiment with the next one, the Ariel, which is sort of the red color. So I just got Ariel, the red color, kind of wet there. You can see it. But I'm going to use a clean brush and some clean water. Just poke it off. And what I'm doing here, Tamara, can I give you this? Because this is DHL calling and we're waiting for the subscription boxes so badly. And I think it might be them. We cannot miss that shipment. Yeah, answer it. Okay. I think she may have missed it. Anyway, the shipment might be here. Tamara, maybe just go upstairs because we can hear the dog barking. Okay, sorry. All right, clean water. And I'm going to put clean water, not tons, but I'm just going to color in that square. I'm coloring in that square with just water. Now I'm going to go to my paint. And now I'll put that same red line down and look what happens. The color just starts bleeding over. And in fact, you can manipulate it even, give it a little bit of help from gravity and watch it kind of make its way to the other side. But it's not, even if I hold it up or down, it's not going to go anywhere that I haven't already put the water. So this is another technique you know we can do as we go along, but just so you're aware that you can allow the water to move for itself just by laying down some water and seeing how far it will go. The more water you put down, the farther it will go. So right now, the clean brush, I'm just going to guide it over the rest of the way so we can get that gradient of color. There we go. Rinse. Next up is frolicsome, or as we like to call it in the real world, orange. It's kind of a dark orange, sort of a frolicsome orange. Yes, the card I'm painting has different names. That's because I took it out of the gold tin. So I had one gold tin, but you guys are all getting blue tins. And I already did my my swatch so I could test it ahead of time. And so just so it would look similar, I just took the blank swatch out of the other one because I don't have another one of these, or I didn't want to waste one that I could send you guys in a mini kit. So that's why I'm reading the names off of this one. So Frolicsome. So now I can show you guys the jigs up. Frolicsome, even though this one says unicorn. All right. This is going to be our long straight. Dab it off a little bit. And now let's just pull that over. If it's looking opaque the whole way over, you got to clean your brush off a little bit more and dab some of that water off because you want to see that variation in color. And, you know, we could do something on a big piece and we could start way over here and make it all the way over until there was literally nothing. So these are very, very tiny swatches, but you could go pretty far with it. All right, next up is tresses. The yellow here. Get that down. And let's pull that over with some water. So now this one looks all one color. See, I didn't get enough variation there. So I'm just going to take some clean paper towel and watch how forgiving watercolor is. As long as it's wet, I can just pull that right up. You can pull it right up, you guys. So if you didn't do what you wanted to do, just pull it right up, add a little bit more water. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm pausing, pause, come back to me. The subscription boxes have arrived.
He's unloading them as we speak.
Oh my goodness. For anyone who's watching, you know we've been waiting for these for like a month and a half. They're here. They're unloading them. Okay, thank you, Tamara, for doing that. Good thing I looked at the phone, hey? Even when I'm live, I look at the phone. All right, back to tresses. This is very exciting news, though, for anyone if you're joining us for the first time, we have a subscription box that comes out. And let's just say it's been delayed because of these boxes. And now they're here. Yes. All right, we know what we're doing tomorrow, tomorrow?
Yep.
Okay. Pulling over. And now look at the difference in that yellow just by removing a bit of that heavier yellow. We're getting a much more accurate. Now, if I'm like, no, it's still not good enough. I'm going to just take some clean water now and put it all over just that yellow and lift it up one more time. If you don't like it, lift it up. Just add a bit of clean water and it sort of acts like an eraser. See what I mean? And you get another chance to do it a little bit better. So that's why have lots of paper towel, and don't be afraid if you aren't doing it perfectly that you're doomed. There, that's a much better gradient of color. I'll just zoom out a little bit more so you can see how I'm tapping my brush every single time, because I want you to get into the same kind of muscle memory as I'm doing here. All right, next up is Sea Nymph. What does that mean? All right, Sea Nymph. That just means another color blue. I can iris down. Oh, yeah. Sorry, it's too late there. There we go. One more up? One more up. When we zoom in, is that a little too bright? That's fine. All right. So we've got a different shade of blue here. And it doesn't take very much water, you'll see, to activate that pigment. Now, in this case, I feel like I could have probably added a little bit more, so I will add a little bit more. Just add another line there. Get a little bit of water on my brush, tap off the excess, and bring it over.
Kim says she was just eating dinner and she looking for watercolor videos and she just happened to find your live.
Stop! It was meant to be! Yay! Well, I'm glad you did. Wow, who was looking for watercolor videos at this exact moment? You want to know why? Because we're coming into summer. We need to do some fun things. All right. Next up, Enchantress. And I'm just putting that line there. Dabbing off my brush and pulling it right over. Now, if you get something like this, it's hard to kind of, maybe you can't see it right across. There's a little bit of pooling happening here. See how there's a little bit extra green? You know what that means? I've got too much water on my brush. I needed to dab that a bit more. So again, my fancy technique of ripping a little piece of paper towel. Let's just start that one again. Too much water on my brush. You don't want pooling. I can show you, I think anyway. In some of your test pieces, so this I did on the morning show the other day. This is a good example of pooling. So when we're practicing leaves, as we will later on, you can see which one has too much water and not enough paint, right? Because you're seeing the pooling right here. You want to have a smooth degradation of color, like these ones. Here, we've got a little too much water, and then I lift up, and then I press back down again, but there's not enough paint, and so that you're getting some pooling. So that's why when you see this kind of pooling, you're better off to stop, lift it up, and paint over it again. Because, you know, in the end, you want a leaf or a stroke that looks more like this or more like this and a little less like this. So that green definitely had some pooling. So just a little less water on my brush. Go back for some more green. And don't, you know, you can dab your brush even with paint on it. That's okay. Dab. You don't want too much water or too much paint. So rinse, dab, and then.
Your water jars don't need to be that big, right?
No, these are just the only jars I could find. These were just the only jars I could find. In fact, I was like, geez, these jars are so big. I'd rather have 5 tiny little baby food jars. That would be better than these giant ones, but use what you have, okay? This is what I could find, these jars or this one tiny one. Otherwise, I was basically using the cereal bowls, and God knows we will run out of those in 10 seconds. So no, they do not need to be this big. All right, the next one up is Lorelei. Let's pretend that's Lorelei Gilmore for all the fans. And there we go. This one is pretty close to Enchantress that we just did.
Oh, Linda says she uses silicone cupcake.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Anything though, like the silicone, like I'd spill that for sure. I don't trust myself very much when water's around. Like I've ruined my phone and my computer, like for sure I'll spill it. Okay, you can see this one is a bit more of a teal for sure. All right, next up, Spice, another green. With florals, you always need lots of greens. So I love that there's lots of greens in this set. Not that you'll only be doing florals, but it's real. Watercolor really is great on florals. This is a much like brighter sort of heather green or Kelly green, not heather green. I'm confusing my girls' names of green colors. And just pull that over. Who's painting along with me? Let me know in the comments. And please, if you want to have a chat while we're doing this, you can follow the link. Happy to talk to someone. You know, I'm just here by my lonesome. Tamara and Karin are here, but they're busy. All right, next up, Flirtatious. Now this one you'll notice it has a little sparkle in it, which is nice. You'll notice the shimmer in this one for sure. So I like that you could use this over top of some of the other colors or mix it if you want a bit of sparkle. So this has a nice corally kind of tone, and then you can rinse it right out. And let's see how, a little too much water.
Oh, Amanda says she is.
Oh, Amanda's painting along
yeah.
too? Good. And last up, Alchemy. And this is a great gold tone. Just gonna paint that off.
Will the lessons be live every week?
They'll be live every week, but they'll stay posted so you can come back and watch and pause, and or if you can't do it tonight but you want to do it later and then follow along, and then fast forward through some of the deliveries and phone calls and things like that, then you can. Okay. All right, there's our first little color swatch. And so this should be a good representation of the paints you've got in your little palette here. So when you're going forward, you can make a better choice on what you want to use or how diluted you want to make your paint. So let's set that one aside to dry just for now. And let's open up the other pack that you got in your kit. Now, if you're getting a mini kit, so if you're ordering a kit tonight and want a mini kit, you won't have these, but you can do everything with whatever watercolors you have. You can go from palettes to pastels like these, all the way over to kind of really more expensive palettes like I've got over here. These ones are Japanese. I love these. And these ones I also love, and they're like Crayola. Use what you have. Some of the other ones that I also love, especially for beginners, and you'll be getting this if you got the subscription box, is some watercolor pencils. And these you can use just like pencil crayons, but you'll activate them. All the pigment is in the barrel. So if you're new to watercolor, but you're more comfortable coloring rather than painting, this is a really good option for you. And anyone who got the subscription box is getting some watercolor pencils in that box, which, as you've heard, just arrived. Okay, so I'm just going to pull out the art liner markers now. So if you got the mini kit, you'll only have one of these markers. But if you got the main kit, then you'll have all of them. Just pick any size, but you don't want the one that says BR. BR is a brush pen, and it has a tip that is meant for brush lettering. And brush lettering and watercoloring go so great hand in hand because you can do these backgrounds and then try your hand at brush lettering. And so if you want, you can you could try brush lettering a title here. So I'm just going to say these are called aqua pastels. So we can talk about the technique on brush lettering another day. Maybe we should do a free brush lettering class so that you can kind of turn your handwriting into like font like this. Aqua. Okay, aqua pastels. This will be our color swatch. So I can put away my brush marker and just take out like maybe the number 1 or the 3, or it doesn't really matter. I wouldn't use the very smallest one. I would use 8 if you have it, 0.8. And essentially what we're going to do is make a color chart for our aqua pastels too. Because it's, hard to know just based on, the color here. It's like red or orange, peach, burgundy. So let's just go by the names that are on them, and then we can, so I'm starting with the yellow here. I've taken these out of my tins. I don't know if I put them back in the right order. So you can just take them out as you wish. So this one's called Monet, and I'm just going to put how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I'm going to do 6 boxes on each side.
Are you writing on one of the little card papers that we put inside the box?
Yes, I'm writing on one of the half pieces. But if you don't want to waste it on this and you have other watercolor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Whoops. Yep. Okay. You don't have to, but I would highly recommend doing a swatch. And I would also recommend using the 0.8 because it's just thicker, and that one feels kind of thin. And if you don't have these markers, if you have a Micron or a Staedtler, those are usually waterproof. You just want to make sure whatever marker you're using is waterproof because you don't want it bleeding all over the page. So this first one is called Monet, M-O-N-E-T, Monet. Doesn't have to be fancy, you guys. So what you're going to do with watercolor pastels is you're going to put dry on dry. So you're going to put just that little line just like that.
Ruby used one of the food bowls for her water.
All right, Ruby. Ruby's got, thanks, Rube. I used one of them. Well, that's your bowl in the morning. You got to rinse that out. All right, next up, we've got, oh, bless her. Laurencin, L-A-U-R-E-N-S or C-I-N, Laurencin, en français. And I'm just putting just a little bit here. Now, just so you know where I'm going with this, I'm going to take my brush. This time I'll use my water brush in the kit that has like the water in the barrel, just so you can see how to use it. I'll just do the first one. And I'm just kind of activating that pigment. And you'll see as soon as you touch it, it just starts melting. And then you can just kind of drag it over. These are really gorgeous to use too and fill in that box. And it'll continue to make its way over, or you can help it, push it over a little bit. What you don't want to do is be squeezing the barrel, because otherwise it'll drip everywhere and you'll have to lift it up. Now you can clean off the end. Try not to squeeze and pull up because it will sort of act a bit like a straw and like suck it up. Just clean it off and tap it off. And then again, activating the ink, and you can see you don't need as much ink as I'm even putting down there. It really goes a long way. And then just drag it over. All right, next up, I've got Gauguin. Is that how you say it? All right, I'm just going to put the G-A-U-G-I-N. I'm just going to do all the swatches first, and then I'll do all the water first. Cézanne. Then Ingres.
Huh, that's what I thought. They're all artist names.
Yes, they are. Dali, D-A-L-I.
Sandra says she can't wait to see which project will be done with which medium.
Oh, you can use whichever medium you want. But tonight I'm going to show you a couple different ways, and you're going to find ways that really do work for you. This one's Frida. And, there are some colors here, like purple, for example, or Michelangelo, that aren't in your palette. So maybe you'll combine.
Do you have a favorite medium?
My favorite is a palette. Now, you could also, once you start getting, let's say, good, or you're not like a total beginner, or you just want to experiment some more, then you might decide to invest in some tubes. And the tube watercolors they're fabulous. They're usually a little, higher quality. They're more expensive. It's definitely more concentration of pigment. You're going to use a palette for these, or a plate, and you just squeeze out a little bit. And of course you can activate and reactivate the colors, and it's, the colors are lovely. The tubes really are fabulous. But it's much more of a cost investment, the tubes. And, if you really get into it, I say go for it. I mean, it's not that expensive, but it is more expensive than the palette. And I find the palette, it's easy. You can take it with you places. all the paint is contained in one place. The tubes sort of scatter sometimes. You end up with more or less of one color, and you never, they can dry out easier. You have to keep the lids on. So I find the palette is really great. So that's just me. Right, next up, Van Gogh. Van Gogh is this blue, dark blue. Botticelli.
Sandra says she loves getting these boxes because I normally play safe and you make me get out of my comfort zone.
Oh, that's so good. You know what? And it is nice for sure to get out of your comfort zone. And also, it would be very hard to go to the store and be like, I'm just going to buy all this stuff because do I need this? What does it go together? So it is nice to get a kit like this where it's all been chosen for you. You know it's all going to work. You're getting a good deal. And yeah, the hard part's kind of done, especially when you're starting out. All right, that's Da Vinci. One last one here. Toulouse-Lautrec. These guys are not in competition with us yet. Soon. Toulouse-Lautrec. All right, I've got them all written down now. Trust me, this is the annoying part. We're going to get to the actual art. But let's just get this done because it's just one of those things whenever you get a new set, you should do. All right, still using my water brush. Make sure I'm activated. So I've got a little bit of water kind of squeezing out of the tip onto some paper towel so I know my brush is wet. And then just activating that pigment. And you'll really see how creamy it just suddenly becomes. And you'll see the difference between how far it pulls over compared to the palette. So I find that the pigment doesn't pull over quite as far as it does with the palette. So this is good. This is good to know. That the main colors kind of stays more where you put it. Whereas over here, you can sometimes get main color floating halfway over, not just where you originally put it. Now, I want to caution you that you never want to try to add more color once it's down. You don't want to add your dry crayon to your wet paper. If you need more color, I would suggest coloring off on something, even if it's your paint palette. So I've got my paint palette here, and if I wanted a little extra of the Ingres, let's say, I can just draw right in there, activate, and bring it over. See what I mean? You don't want to color on top of wet. You want to color on dry, activate, and bring over. So as we do our project tonight, after we're finished this, we can actually make our own paint palette if we want. So I could add a little bit of extra right here on the side if I want to pick that up and use it on my actual painting. So I could pick it up and bring it over. Pick it up and bring it over. Because essentially what you're getting in the crayon form like that is pigment, but it's just in a different sort of delivery system. So now we've got the Dali. These ones really pull over and get quite translucent. It's nice. Now, Frida. How's everybody doing out there? Yeah, Jackie's loving the aqua pastels. They are very easy. It's a great place to start for sure. Everybody knows how to color with crayons, right? And then when you bring over the brush like this, where you don't even have to really like dip it, the water just keeps kind of coming out at an even pace, does make it nice. Ooh, look at that nice Michelangelo. That deep purple. And if you want, bring it out a little bit more. Pull it right across. All right, Van Gogh, let's see what you got. So if you're painting along with me, you'll be getting the feel now of how the watercolor moves, how much water you should be putting on, how much is too much water. Am I getting some puddling? If I am, ease up. Yeah, question.
Do the pastels and paints typically last a long time?
Oh my gosh, do they last a long time is the question. Years. Years. You guys are going to have this little palette for years. I'm going to show you something. Where is it? I think it's down here. Where did I put it? Anyone see that palette that's white on the top? It was sitting here. I'm just going to look real. Oh, here it is. It was on my chair. How do I even stay functioning? So this is my very first like real palette that I bought. Was not expensive. And look at it. I've had this for over 10 years. And it's still, even though it looks like a hot mess, it's still perfectly good. All I have to do is activate the paint, give it a little spritz, and we are good to go. So I wanted to show you guys this one because, to be honest, when I say I love palette paint, this is the one I actually reach for the most often because it was my first one. It's been great. It lasts forever. You can bring all the colors with you. You just have to activate it. No big deal. Everything okay out there, Tamara?
Everything is good.
Okay.
Brought in the boxes so they wouldn't go missing.
Yay! All right, we're almost done. Just finishing up Da Vinci. Ooh, that's nice. And last one, sort of nice grass green. There we go. Okay, so now you've got a little paint palette. Perfect. So if you want to use any of these colors, I'd suggest putting a little extra on the outside of them, or you could use another sheet. If this is all the watercolor paper you have is what's in the box, then I would use it sparingly. Don't just fill a whole sheet. But you could use a little sheet and put whatever color it is that you wanted to use. Like let's say it was the Van Gogh. We could make ourselves a little palette, almost like an artist palette, like this.
Someone's asking if they get the mini kit, what they won't be getting.
They won't get the pastels because we're totally out of them. And you won't get the full pack of art liner markers. You'll just get one marker. That's no big deal, really. Well, I mean, it's nice to have the whole pack, but you can still at least use them or use one. And the Painting Faces paper pad. So on the portrait night, you won't have the full pad because that's totally sold out too. We couldn't get any more of those. But other than that, you'll get everything else.
Where can they get more watercolor paper?
We can put a link up, but when you're buying watercolor paper, you just want to look for, it doesn't have to be super expensive. You could look for, it might be called student grade. That might be a little less expensive. I think that's fine for this. Amazon's got watercolor paper. Michael's has watercolor paper. Joann's, wherever you live, like whatever art store is close to you or craft store will have watercolor paper, but you have to use watercolor paper. You really cannot use mixed media paper or printer paper or cardstock. You need it to have that tooth. So let's talk about that for a minute. So we've got our, let me just one thing at a time. We've got a little palette here. And what you can do is literally pick this paint up the same way you would pick this up. You won't add nearly as much water and it won't last as long. This is sort of one-time use. But you'll pick it up and you'll bring it to see how you can bring it to your paper. You're not going to get quite as pigmented, but you definitely can get sort of a medium tone all the way to a translucent tone. So if you're wanting to use your aqua pastels, but you don't want to have to color on the actual paper, that's how you would use them. All right, how are we doing out there? Let's take a few questions or anything tomorrow, or people just watching along, and we can keep moving.
You can keep going.
Okay. So I'm just going to move this over for space.
Can they use the paper they got in the last cricket event?
No. Is it watercolor? That's not watercolor paper. No. Has to be watercolor paper. So let's talk about watercolor paper for a minute. Let's zoom right into it if we can. Watercolor paper looks like regular paper, like it's white and it's, paper. But it has what we call a tooth. And the tooth means it's kind of bumpy. If you look at it, you can feel it. And you might find online or in the store hot pressed or cold pressed. Cold press is going to be less expensive and it'll do the job just fine. What you want to make sure you've got is cotton, cold pressed water paper or watercolor paper. That's what I would suggest if you are, if you're just starting out. All right, I'm going to change up my paper towel because it's getting there.
So is there watercolor paper that has a tooth, but that is smoother?
So the cold press has a tooth, but is smoother. It would be more of a student grade, I guess. But it's totally fine. Totally fine for what we're doing. And the hot press is a little thicker. It has a little more handmade feel. I think I have some hot press and cold press in here. So let me see if I can find the, you can almost tell the difference in which one it is right away because it, here we go. So this is a hot press. It's hard to tell, like, let me see if I have another one that has like the rigid edge. It looks more like a handmade paper. Here it is. It has like an edge. Okay, I gotta find something that's like darker so you can see on top of it. So it has like this would be a hot press paper. It looks far more like a handmade paper. This cold press looks far more like regular paper, but it still has that same rough feel. So you can't go wrong if you have either hot press or cold press. I would go for right now a fairly economical version, as long as it's like a cotton cold press watercolor paper. There's lots of great brands out there. Canson makes a great brand. Strathmore, Spectrum Noir has great watercolor paper, like student watercolor paper. And just 8.5 by 11 sheets or 9 by 6 sheets, 9 by 12 sheets. I like loose sheets better than pads because I don't like ripping it out. I like it to be loose because inevitably you could ruin the end if it's in a pad. Now they sometimes will give you a little extra, but I like it to be already cut. So that's why we gave everybody loose leaf paper. And if you're getting loose leaf, I would cut it in quarters or cut it in half, because what we tend to do with watercolor when we're testing things out like this is just fill the whole sheet with nonsense. And you'll fill the whole sheet no matter what size it is. So at least here you'll waste a little less. So I would cut your big sheets if you order it in half. Okay, let's go back to the kit and let's get out our stamps. I'm going to get out the violet stamp. So that's this one. And see if I have, we're going to use our cards. Do I have another? I used it for my swatch.
I need a little piece.
Oh, I got one.
Chrissy says she found some watercolor paper at Dollarama.
Oh, okay. Now, you're definitely going to see a difference, even between like the Dollarama watercolor paper and like the Canson watercolor paper that you'd find like at Michael's or at a craft store. They're not all created equally. If you get any sort of pilling, like if the paper starts to, like you're putting water on it and you're putting water on it again and it's starting to like lift, that's not good watercolor paper. Watercolor paper should take and absorb the water. Now, you will get some wrinkling. You can see on the edges of this page, if I were to hold it like this, you can see it's sort of like crinkly, like on the edge here. So if we're seeing overhead, you can see this is not totally straight the way it started out. Like, see how it starts out totally straight? The water will cause that crinkling. That's normal. That does not mean that you've got cheap or bad watercolor paper. That's just the paper absorbing the water. If you've spilt on a book or whatever and it dries, that always happens. But watercolor paper, it should have about that much crinkling. If it's like up and over like this, I mean, that's not great. But it will get a little bit of that like kind of crinkling along the edge. That's totally normal. And with your test sheets, if you are going to use any as just like throwaways like this, use both sides. For sure, use both sides. That's a better use of your paper. So we've done the swatches. I don't want to spend our whole first night just going over like technique and theory. I really want you to make something every single class, because that's how you're going to feel motivated, like you're really doing something. So this is where the stamps come in. If you're a beginner and you don't know how to draw or paint, stamping is a really great way to be able to watercolor or even just plain color and kind of achieve really good results without being an artist. So if this is your first time stamping, I'll walk you through it, but you're going to pull out your stamp. Make sure you've got your stamp block. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's good. That's all those. They're not broken. They're meant to just come out, but okay. That's okay. All right, you got your stamp block. Everyone's laughing at home. That's fine. And what you're going to do, tomorrow, will you do me a favor and grab me just the clipboard that's there? You're going to pull off the back piece of plastic and pull off your stamp. Thank you. I've got a clipboard here and I'm going to put my watercolor paper on it. So, I think it's going to help you see it better. And so I'm just going to take some of the washi tape that was in my kit and I'm going to tape it just down on, if you have a clipboard, great. If not, you don't have to do this. But it is going to help keep your paper and if you were doing a full background and you wanted, you could go all the way around. That way you end up with like a white border, which is a look. You know, some people, I'm running out of tape here. This is an old thing, so two sides are fine. Okay, so with my stamping block here, I'm just going to, on the side that doesn't have the word homemade on it, I'm just going to lay down my stamp. And now my stamp it looks black because I've already used it a bunch of times. And it's okay. Stamps, polymer stamps like this stain. It doesn't mean they're ruined. You can try to clean it as much as you want. It won't come off. But it also won't make like a mark on anything either. The polymer just stains. It's no big deal. It's a sign of a well-loved stamp. So we're going to take some of our waterproof ink and we're going to open it up and bring the ink to the stamp. Sometimes we think we have to go like this, but you're actually far more effective with the ink if you bring the ink to the stamp instead of the other way around. And make sure it gets all over it, because you kind of only have one shot. If you want to practice stamping before you bring it to your watercolor paper, if this is your very first time stamping, just get a little piece of printer paper. Like, you know, this can go on anything. Get a little piece of printer paper. Let me put it on the other side of the clipboard here so you can see it. Little piece of printer paper and practice. So you can feel that the stamp block has a ridge for your fingers, and you're just going to push it straight down. Oh, I moved it. Look at this. I moved it. Okay. See, this is why it's good to practice. I'm also going on the wrong side of the clipboard. I'll just bring the pad of paper over. All right. Once you've stamped it down once, you got to re-ink. There won't be enough ink on. But you can see I'm doing lots of ink. All right, turn it over, set it down, and make sure that the entire surface has touched the paper. So you can run your thumb along it, but you don't want it to move. Nice. I know. Stamps are the best because someone else has drawn it for you, but you're going to get all the credit for this art, okay? All right, so that's a good test run. Let's do it for real. So if you're in the homemade group on Facebook right now, that's awesome. Hello. If you're not, feel free to join that group. It's where you can post. Katie, if you're on, we'll make an album, and you can post all of your watercolors this week. I'd love to see them. Or if you're on social media, please tag me if you're posting. I can't wait to see what you guys make. Okay, so you've got some options. I'm going to go vertically and go up and down, but you could have this go like this way. You could have it go this way. Whichever way kind of speaks to you. I'm going to go up and down. And I'm doing my best to kind of center it, put it down, and let's just... Now, remember, watercolor paper has those ridges, like that tooth that it's called. So your stamped image isn't going to be quite as crisp as on a flat piece of paper because it has to, you know, accommodate those ridges. So really push it down. Make sure it doesn't move. Don't try to stamp it a second time. Guarantee you'll get like an echo or like a shadow. Stamp it on the back side if you've ruined the front side. There we go. Good. So we can set our stamp aside. Make sure at some point you put it back on the...
Cheryl says art liner pens are good for filling in missed stamp bits.
Yes, they are. Absolutely. Stole one of my tips, Cheryl. Just kidding. It is a good one. How long will it take to get my mini kit? She's in Brantford. Not long. Not long. Have it before the next one. Don't worry.
Do you
Okay.
clean the stamp?
You can clean the stamp if you want, but there's not a lot of ink left on it. So absolutely touch it with your paper towel with your water, but it's waterproof ink, right? That's why it's staining. But I almost never clean my stamp like that. There are stamp cleaners when you're using dye-based inks, but usually the ink will come off in a good stamped impression. Okay, I'm going to reactivate my my little palette here. So this is the one I'm going to use, and I will bring over my little one and done palette in case I need any of those colors. Let's just make sure we've... And I'm just going to use a regular, one of the regular round brushes. I think I have... I'm going to use the smallest one for this. The large one, you know, is really for more like, you know, if you're going to do something, we'll get to this, don't worry. Something like the bigger leaves here where you're pushing down. But this little small is great for little small things like that. And because we're mostly coloring in here, I'm going to use the small. So let's get some water on my brush. I want to make sure you can see everything. Everybody, can everyone see? Do I need to zoom out a little more?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. Okay. And then we'll just make that a little darker. There we go. Let me know if you need me to zoom in, because some of these are very, very tight, or maybe we can get it on the other shot. Jackie's saying, I have so many stamps, glad to be able to combine them with watercolors. For sure, whatever stamps, if you're a crafter and you've got stamps at home, you can totally use your watercolor ink and I mean, if you don't want to stamp this stamp tonight, don't. Pull one from your stash. Cool.
Someone saw you on the Global Morning Show this week, and that's how she found out about you.
That's so great. I'm so glad you're tuning in. We totally previewed this on the morning show yesterday. I have a regular segment on the morning show, so if you're a regular watcher, we're always doing all kinds of different craft projects, and yeah, this was a perfect one for them. Okay, what color should we do the main flower?
Ruby says, what happens if you ruin both sides of your paper?
Oh, Ruby, then you just come on down, see Mom. I'll give you some more. Come on. All right. I know. It was so cute. Like, she signed up. She's like, I signed up for your watercolor class. I was like, you did? She's like, yeah, with my email and everything. And I was like, oh, that's great. I was like, we ran out of kits. She's like, what? I was like, you can have part of mine, but I have to give it to the customers first. She's like, okay, I understand. So tonight I've kind of siphoned off. So she probably only has one piece of paper up there. Come on down. I'll give you some more. Okay. Let's do what color should we do our main flower? Does anyone have any suggestions here on our palette, what they'd like to see? Maybe I'm going to start with this coral color, the one with the sparkles in it. And let's just add, I think I gotta zoom in a little because you guys gotta see close up what I'm doing here.
Oh, Cheryl says purple.
Purple. So I've got purple in okay, fine. I've got purple in my pastels. So here's what I'll do with the purple. I'm gonna bring my pastel right to my paper, and I'm just gonna color just around the sort of the bud, the stamen. That's it. Okay. So you can use purple, you can use pink, you can use whatever color you want. And now with my water, clean water on my little brush, I'm going to just activate that purple one petal at a time. I'm not coloring the whole thing, one petal at a time, because we want each petal to look a little bit different. And we want that watercolor look. Now this looks like it probably could have some darker watercolor up where it's leaning against its neighboring petal. And now I'm going to clean off my brush. So I'm cleaning off my brush and just plain water. I'm going to come and I'm going to join it. And I'm just sort of pulling down first and letting that clean water hit. Here's Ruby. Come on in. Let's see what you did.
Big mistake.
Let's see.
I ruined
you're
sides.
okay. Now here's the thing, Ruby. Here's the thing. Okay, that one, yeah, that one's not so good. But this one is totally usable because you can totally see the image. And I want you to go ahead and start painting inside because you can totally see these lines. And this goes for you guys watching too. If you have a stamped image that's not so great, I'm just going to pull some of this color off. It's even better to go ahead and color it. A, you're going to practice. And B, it's going to look more like you painted it yourself instead of colored in an image. And by the time we get the background onto this stamped image, you're not even really going to see those lines anyway, right, Rube? Ruby, you're even wearing your button. Come here, honey. Come here.
I decided to wear it.
This is the sweetest. Thank you for wearing the button. Come here. Look, she's even wearing the pin. Is anyone else actually wearing the pin?
The candy was really good.
Oh, you ate the candy. I know. All right, off you go.
Oh,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
don't have the blue palette.
Yeah, I know you don't have the blue palette. We have to share. We have to share. You're good. Go on.
Oh, and I made my own palette like that.
Good.
and another-
Good. All right. So back to the watercolor. We're activating each petal at a time and just bringing that water up. If you're finding that you're getting some pooling, again, lift up with some paper towel. Just get a little corner. Have it on standby, ready to lift up. And just do that for each petal. Activate with a little bit of water. And because I use the crayon here, it's super pigmented. So I can pull even from another leaf and add a little bit more here. Clean off your brush. And now I'm just, with clean water, going to bring that to meet the pigment and let it melt. Let it come together. A little too much water. So just lift it up and fill it in. It's important to go one leaf at a time so that each leaf starts to take on its own shading, just like it would in real life. Otherwise, you'd just be coloring it with, a marker and it would all look the same. All right, let's bring some more out, dark purple. And let's really have not too much color here. Let's let it be pretty pale. This one looks like it's sticking right out in the sun, so it doesn't need to be quite as harsh as the other ones. Okay, let's keep going. It's quiet in here. Everybody's watching. Hopefully some of you are painting along. And then if you want, you could even start with a clean brush and then go into the pigment. And rinse off, start with a clean brush, not too much water, clean brush, and go into the pigment and then see what happens. It's going to kind of start to pick it up and bring it over. Like this will be a slow bleed over, but you can help it out. Push it along. So here's what I'd suggest. I'm going to let this dry a little bit while we do the green and some of the other flowers. And then let's come back to it and see if we need to add a bit more shading, because you can always reactivate. You can always reactivate. And it dries lighter. So adding a little bit more is not the end of the world. It dries lighter. All right, so let's leave that for just a few minutes. Let's not do the leaves right next to where we've painted, because remember what I said at the beginning, water, the color will travel wherever there's water. So if I put wet green right here next to the wet purple, there's a good chance it's going to bleed over into the purple. So let's let that dry a little bit. And let's work on some of the greens on the outer leaves. So for this, I'm going to use the green from my palette, the Water Spirit, first green.
A couple of people are asking if you can use like a heat gun.
Yes.
To dry it, or
So,
how long will it take to dry?
It won't take long. If you have a heat gun, like if you're a crafter and you do embossing or anything like that and you have a heat gun, I wouldn't use a hair dryer because it blows everything everywhere. But a heat gun has low wind but high heat. You can definitely heat gun it. My tip, though, if you're using a heat gun, is you want to do it a little bit on the top and then a little bit at the bottom. Otherwise, your paper will turn out like this. So a little bit at the top, a little bit at the bottom, a little bit at the top, and it'll dry it from both sides, and you'll get a much more flat surface. So yes, heat gun is a good idea. But this will be dry by the time we're done these leaves. Okay, so I've got a nice creamy base, and I'm just going to paint just along where the stamp is showing me where those veins are. And I'm just going to do it on just this top little cluster. And then I'm going to rinse off my brush. Or you can put your brush down into the top of your lid or into your little paint palette and take some of it off. Get that out from under the emojis there. Now, I've got a bunch of paint down here, so I want to make sure it stays clean though. So then with my clean water, I'm just going right over top of that leaf and then letting that green find that water and letting it just naturally kind of make its way on the leaf. And if you've got a little too much, take a little bit off. You can lift with your paper towel. Spread that right around. But definitely allow yourself to have that little bit of a white, that white showing, that white highlight. That's what's going to give you that watercolor look, is if not everything is opaque. Some of it, where the color changes from like a dark to a watery light. See how I use my paper towel there just to lift up a little bit. And let's activate this one. Now, if you want, you could do a couple different greens, but I would caution you mixing the greens on the same stem because nature probably wouldn't do that. Nature probably wouldn't do seaglets, you know, whatever other funny one, sea mist, Lorelei, and like instead, just like have a different gradient of green in the same family in your cluster. So you can just add a little bit more water or you can take some away. Add a little bit more paint if you need to. Okay, let's do the next green. This one's right inside behind that flower. And don't worry if you're kind of a little outside of the lines, it's not the end of the world. And then clean water, not too much water. Let it find it and then just let it absorb its way out. All right, I'm going to go to this leaf now. It's not too close to the purple. Or the purple is dry enough now that it's not going to catch. Everybody doing okay out there?
They're quiet.
All right, let's just watch along. Clean water now, and let's just let that clean water find the paint and let that color mix together.
How can you tell if an ink pad is good for watercoloring?
It will say on the back, typically, whether it's waterproof or not. Some inks are made to work as watercolors. For example, like distress inks, a lot of those colors you can actually pull out and they will totally spread. It will say waterproof dye. So Finesse is good. VersaFine ink is good. Ranger's Archival Black ink is waterproof. So if you have any of those in your stash, but it'll say on the back if it's waterproof. If it doesn't say, put some down and, you know, put some water on it. If it smears, it's not waterproof. Okay, there's one more leaf. So basically on mine, everywhere there was a flat big leaf, I'm using that one color green. It's sort of like that's how those leaves grew. And then when we've got more of the vines, then we could switch up the color. Or we could even do something like, let's try mixing some colors. So on my two bigger leaves here, let's try mixing a little bit of that green that we just used. So I'm just going to put some in my paint palette. Then I'm just going to rinse off my brush. And then let's take some of that gold. Let's see what happens. We're going to end up with a nice sort of like a different kind of earthy, kind of mossy color. And even if you get some of that paint, that color on your gold, no big deal. Or even on your green, no big deal. You want to darken it up, add a little bit more green. But this is a great way to get colors that you don't already have, but that are still in your same, like that would still be on the color wheel together. And so if you want, you could, oh, whoops, there we go, sorry. So we can use that as more of a little sun-dried leaf versus a real green leaf. See what I mean? Or we could use that gold, put some down, and add one of the different greens, one of the lighter greens.
I can't see what you're mixing.
Oh dear. Okay, let's zoom in a little more. There we go. And come up with a totally new shade. So with my paper towel, I'm going to lift up some of that. And let's add that new one. Since it's a little more vibrant than the first one we laid down. Okay, a little too much water. Let's just pull that right up. And we're basically just coloring in with paint and practicing the variation of color. So we can add a little bit more to where the stem line is, and then let the water do its magic. So I'm liking this. Let's just give a little touch to those ivy ones. Now, if you color these in the whole way and don't get a huge gradient of color, no big deal. Or you can just paint just at the bottom of the stem and leave the top totally white and let it kind of dry a little bit and just paint the bottoms. So maybe do 2 stems here and then rinse your brush right off, and with clean water from the top, just let it meet down. And then you're going to get that watercolor look that looks so nice. So here, we're just going to go from the white down into the dark. And so even something tiny like that can still have that look. Let's do another one. Up here, just at the stem, the base of that little leaf. This is why having some small brushes, some different sizes is good. Just using that point. Clean off your brush. And pull it down in. Now you want to have some water, Jen. Here we go. Jackie says she's concentrating. I hear you, Jackie. Hi, Liz. Okay. On lives like this, can you add photos in the comments? I don't know if you can or not. But definitely leave us a photo. Whoa, threw my brush away. Definitely leave us some photos in the group. We'd love to see what you painted tonight. I doubt you're finished yet. If you are, wow. Okay, just going to keep going with that green, get these vines done.
Liz says it's looking so lovely.
Oh, nice. It's fun and relaxing. And you know what? I wanted to start tonight with the stamping and the coloring in because this is something anyone can do because we all know how to color. And so even if we're not able to free form flowers on our own or paint, you know, with watercolor because, you know, sometimes we think, oh, I'm not a very good drawer or whatever. Anyone can do this. You can do this. Take a stamp or an image. If you have watercolor paper and you want to put it through your printer, make sure it's a laser printer. Inkjet ink will run, but I've had good luck with most laser inks. So if you're wanting to print out some images, maybe that you find online or whatever, if you don't have any stamps. Okay.
Someone's asking what the time duration of each of the classes will be and will it be replayed.
Yes, this is going to stay posted and the class will be as long as it kind of needs to be. We're trying to keep it under 2 hours here for Tamara and Karen's sake, but I could really do this all night long. They're like, oh no. But yeah. So my purple flower in the middle is pretty well dry at this point, but it also looks a little splotchy. I'm going to go ahead and fill in the middle. Just filling in the middle over top of the stamped image. And I'm just going to pull some of that extra purple out on each leaf. Now, you don't want to ever just leave it like that. Rinse off your brush and then continue to fill in the rest. Otherwise, you'll end up with a line that will dry. You always want to finish your section off. Because if I leave this one right here like that, it's going to dry with that line, and I don't want that. We want there to be always a blend. So just finish it off. It doesn't have to go dark all the way to the edge, but you want to finish off the entire leaf so that it all mixes together. All right, that's looking a little better. So let's let that dry again while we do the little flowers here. Now, I would always, there's 4 flowers here, like that are the same shape. Let's try to do these ones a lighter, brighter color, like maybe the gold or the coral. Let's go for the gold. Let's go for the gold. It's a little creamy in the palette, so I'm just taking some off. Putting it in my dish. Yep.
Alyssa has a question.
What's
I
your
see you're painting in both directions on the leaves. Does this change anything?
So you want to make sure you're getting the colors to mix. So I would put if you've got your pigment down in the middle, I would then bring it back up. It's okay to go in both directions when you're trying to blend, but when you're trying to merge like the dark into the light, you know, pulling it back some is just bringing some water. So it's totally okay to go in both directions when you're doing it like this. When you're doing something like this, where you're free forming, you're only going in one direction. For sure, you're going in one direction because we're not coloring anything in when we're painting. But when we're coloring an image like this and we're kind of manipulating the gradient, then 2 directions is fine. All right, so I'm just getting a little bit of gold like in the center. I'm even going right over the black. That's fine. And I'll do that on a couple. Just getting it at the base. And now with some clean water, not too much water, I'm going to start and just add the clean water to the edges and then let it come up. Now, while this is wet, it might be a good idea for me to kind of make a little bit of a brown. So let's take some yellow and let's take that green again, and a lot of the green. And let's make a little bit of a brown. So yellow and green, a little more green. I'm going to take a couple of greens until I get a good brown color. Maybe I'll add a little bit of that orange. There we go. The orange is helping. So I've got some green, some gold, some orange, and I'm getting like a good brown. So even though you've only got these 12 colors, you really can make anything. And I'm just going to add that brown to the center of each of those flowers. And then I'm going to rinse off my brush, not too much water at all, and then go back over the yellow. And if some of that brown starts to leak out, cool, that's good. It'll just give us like a sort of a nice variation on some of that gold. So I can pick up a little bit more of that gold and go around some of that brown. So it deliberately picks it up and it deliberately starts to move. And then just making sure I don't have any white of the paper showing through. And just let it see what it does. This one's a little bit darker than the other ones because I pulled that brown out. If that's not the look you want, add a little bit of clean water and pull it back some. Wipe it off, add some clean water, and you can dab, pull it right off. If it got away from you, like that one's a little browner than it probably should be. So just dab it with a little paper towel and fill it back in till it's a little bit lighter again. As long as you activate with water, then you can pull it right off the paper. There we go. And we've got two little sort of daisies here. What color should we do those? Let me think here. Sometimes I like to go right off base and do like a navy or something like that you might not expect. Let me look at my color swatch. I'm going to go for the Nereid. So that's like that third blue at the top. I'm just going to dilute it a little bit. Let's see what it looks like.
How do you clean off your palette after you've done?
Just water. It'll just rinse away. Just water. Take it to the sink, wash it out. You could use soap too. All right, so each leaf, I'm just going right at the bottom of the stem. I mean, this is pretty small, right at the bottom of the stem. Sometimes a little unexpected blue like this, I love in a watercolor print. Okay, clean water. And now just at the top of the leaf, let's let it kind of mix itself. So these leaves are now dry. These leaves look a little colored in, like a little, the same color. So I'm just going to go back in with that green. This was the green here we used on the palette. I'm just going to darken it up right at the base.
Melissa says you are a fantastic teacher.
Aw.
So very calm.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
Linda's asking, can you mix the mediums or should you stay with one type for the whole picture?
Of course, you can totally mix the mediums. Let's mix the mediums here. How about for the background, I use the blue from the Pastels. That's this one, right? Yeah. That's Botticelli. Now, so what I'm going to do for the background, I can go back to those leaves too, but what I'm going to do for the background, a little bit of water, and let's just pick up some of that blue. Let's just activate it on our little one-time use palette. And just in the nooks and crannies of this stamp, I'm going to add that bright blue. Just along the actual flower. And then rinse off your brush and literally with water, just pull that color out until you start to get a background that kind of moves away from the flowers. You can add a little bit more if you need to. So all the way around your entire flower, just add that blue just around the edges. And then with water, let's just bring it out. Add a little bit. And let's just let it kind of fade out on its own for that background. So picking some up. And then letting it fade out. If you get a little too blue out in the open here, just add a little more water. Pull that blue right out. Now, I'm not going to go all the way to the edge because I kind of like the look of it being a little bit of a watercolor, splotch. Is that a word? No. Sploosh, blob, splotch. And just pull it up. So the more we get to the ends, the lighter it is. See how it's really just sort of like jumping away from the page now. Some of that blue here. Don't forget the little nooks and crannies in between. And that's why it's sort of important that your stamp is, or some of your flowers are dry, because it would be easy to pick up the green or the yellow if it wasn't totally dry. So that's where a heat gun could come in handy if it wasn't totally dry and you wanted to really get going. Almost done, you guys.
Kristen says splotch is a real word.
All right, I knew it. My vocab is on point. Okay. This one I let dry a little too long up here. I didn't activate it quite fast enough, so I got to get some more water on that. I'm going to just bring my paper towel, and I'm really going to try to either go over top of it with some more blue so I don't have a line there. There we go. Over top. We don't want deliberate lines. We want things fading out.
So could you paint your background and then go over your flower with the colors you want, like a layering?
No,
Okay.
because you'll end up having like sort of a muddy flower then. Like if you did your background first, what would happen probably is that you would end up, once you did your flower, it catching and coming in. But I always do my backgrounds at the end. And if you were to do this blue right across, you wouldn't get any of the true colors. Like you wouldn't see the true green or the purple. And it doesn't have to be even or perfect or symmetrical. That's the beauty of watercolor, that it really can look so different every single time. Just bring down some of that water and then bring over some paint and then let it just kind of pick it up. What you want to avoid is, in this kind of a situation, is obvious strokes where you've obviously colored it in. We want the water to do the work. We want the water to move the paint, not necessarily. Your brush is just sort of guiding it. Your brush is sort of just putting it down there. You want the water to really guide it. And now this blue here, it's going to dry, but tomorrow I can reactivate what's left there. It's not done for good, but what I don't want to do is add more blue on top of that wet blue. You don't want to add a dry pencil or crayon to wet. That'll kind of ruin the pigment. Well, you won't really get anywhere with it. It won't work. There we go. This looks pretty good. I don't really think it needs to be too much darker on this side. I kind of like that it's fading out on the downside here. See, I'm just adding more water and then like the pigment up where the pigment kind of is, and then letting the water catch it and bring it down. Don't be afraid for there to be like spots where there is kind of what looks like just clean water. Resist trying to bring your pigment down over to this part. If you want it to be more pigmented, add more pigment up here and let the water catch it and let it bring it down. Bring more pigment up here and let the water catch it and bring it down. I mean, you can kind of push it and guide it in the right direction, but don't bring the pigment right to the edge. Let the water do that. And then that's how you're going to end up with that sort of like have a feeling that's pretty dry. So with your art liner markers, you could go ahead and add a little bit more of a kind of a scribble to the middle if you wanted to darken that up. You could do that. Make sure it's dry though. If you wanted to add more lines to your leaves, you could. I'm not going to because I kind of like that it looks as though I've painted this myself. You barely even notice that there's stamped lines here. And this was what's so great about watercoloring with stamps is that, you know, we've given you a pebble color here. Sometimes you stamp in black, but you can also stamp in like a super, super light yellow or light brown. And that's called no line watercolor stamping. And you won't see the lines at all. You literally only see the lines just enough to color it in. And that's a way to kind of take your stamping with watercoloring to the next level, is to get a few lighter colors of ink. And you could try stamping with those if freehand isn't what you eventually will be into. But give this a try for the next couple of weeks and see where you kind of land. Most of us, we're just doing this for fun and for a creative outlet. So, if it's all new to you, then, you know, it's all experimenting anyway. So let's just see what feels good and what looks good, where you have the most fun. We definitely don't want to feel frustrated when we're watercoloring. It's meant to be a nice free flowing experience. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry a little bit, but, you know, rather than keep you the whole time while it's drying, I'm going to grab one of my card fronts here. And do I have any little stickies in here? I might have given them to Ruby and her, because we're sharing a kit. But what you're going to do is on your card base, you can put just some plain printer paper cut down to size on the inside if you want to write a message to someone and you want it to be white on the inside. And if your cardstock is a little too big for the card, you can trim it down if you want, or you can have it perfectly sized on there. I would probably trim that down a little bit. That one looks like a little bit busier or a little bit bigger. So with some of your adhesive dots, let's make sure this is dry. So with your adhesive dots, you just pull one side off.
Do you want to put this one on?
Oh, sure. That one's already dry. Yeah. Okay. You can also see I put one of the little sentiments. These flowers are for you. In your stamp set, there's a bunch of different sentiments. These flowers are for you, handmade for you, handmade by me for you. Sending, these are all upside down because I put it in wrong. Can't remember what I wrote on them. Sending, these flowers are for you. Is that what I said? These flowers are for you. Anyway, there's a couple cute ones. So if you're wanting to send a card to your girlfriend or your mom or your sister, that would be, I'm sure they'd love to get that in the mail. All right, see, these just go down just like that. You peel off the back. And I love using glue dots like this because, or tape runner is also really good, rather than actual like liquid glue. Liquid glue tends to like warp your paper even more. So this is great. And you don't have to use them all. You could just use, you know, on each corner or even just on the top and bottom. I don't think the colors mean anything. I think they're just multicolored. All right, so get it down there. And then just choose a color card base you think accentuates your card. I probably should have trimmed this down a little bit more. This paper trimmer still had it here. It's like we clean up and then we don't clean up. You know how it is. But I've already got the glue on. All right, I'll try to just trim this a little bit. If you're going to trim, I would not use scissors. If you're going to use scissors, you're doing it at your own risk, okay? You've been warned. Now, of course, my glue dots are stuck under there. I mean, I knew that was going to happen, but because I put them on, but still, I still want to trim it down. Come on. All right. I'm such a spaz, honestly. Okay. And then just center it. Press down those glue dots and you've got it stuck on there for good. Nice. The first card done. There you go. Ruby, how did you do? Just giving me the thumbs up. What are you down here looking for? Oh, tape runner she needs. She knows where it is. There's a whole drawer full. Yeah, this was fun. We did a lot of good stuff tonight. We made out our swatches. We learned a little bit about how watercolor moves. We learned how to stamp for watercolors using the watercolor ink or the waterproof ink, and a little card front. And honestly, if you wanted to do a bunch of these, I would stamp them all out and have a bunch going, and you could kind of assembly line card make. The real hardcore crafters assembly line card make, because it almost takes the same effort to make one card as it does to make 5 or 6 cards. So you might want to stamp some down and then, you know, watercolor them as you go, or have some stamped out so that you can just pull it and do it when you need to. It's very easy to just travel with a water barrel brush like this, and your little card, or even on a clipboard. This doesn't take much to travel with. And that's a great time killer if you're waiting somewhere. And trust me, I have painted in so many arenas and so many like doctor's office and orthodontists, and that everyone's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" Like, "Oh, you know, just killing time." Something different than just scrolling on your phone, right? Look, we've been at this for 2 hours and 5 minutes, and I can see it in the faces of Karin and Tamara, who are behind the camera. So we will wrap it up. I hope you guys all had fun tonight. Next week, we are going to be doing watercolor backgrounds. So we'll be using our bigger brushes, and we're going to practice doing gradients between colors and letting our image pop off the page. So that'll be great fun. We'll be using the park benches that's in your kit. But if you've just got watercolor paper at home, you can still learn to do great backgrounds next week. If you're wanting the mini kit, it should get to you in time for next week. You can go to market.homemade.ca and find the mini kit, or Katie can put the link in. You're going to get almost everything we've got here. The mini kit's still really great. We just sold out of some of the things. So we sold out of watercolor kit, but we still were able to get extras of some of the things, most of the things actually. So we can put together a mini kit for anyone wanting it. Homework. Is that what people are asking? What's the homework?
We have homework.
All right. So your homework is on the back. I don't want you to waste too much paper, but on the back of something, or go ahead, use a piece if you've got one. I want you to practice with your round brush, because we're building. Where did I do with my round brush? Let's just use this one. With your round brush, we're going to be building to freehanding our own flowers and doing our own strokes and doing our own paintings. So I want you to practice doing a bunch of lines. They're going to look like leaves, where you start with a very thin line and then you go down, very thin line, and then you go down. Now you can see I've got that pooling here. So if I take some of that paint off my brush, have it a little bit creamier, let's see if I can get a better impression with a little less pooling. Oh, that's better. Let's see how it dries though. Let's see if we can get an even. So what I want you to practice doing, there we go, is this sort of up and down motion. Up. So very light pressure on the tip and then heavy pressure where you use your entire brush. But look, I pushed down there and I got that dry streak. So it's going to be up to you to find that sweet spot that's just enough paint to water so that you don't have a dry spot in the middle. See what happened there? I had a dry spot right in the middle. Not good. So let's get some more paint on our brush. Thin it out a little bit if you have to. Find that creamy texture, and where you can, where you can get a couple strokes without too much pooling, where you don't have to go and color it back in. So we want to be able to develop the ability to use our brush as our way of drawing. So when we're doing things like, you know, I'm just using this cattail one as an example. None of this has been colored in. All of these are just using the brush and different amounts of pressure on the brush. So that's what I want you to try to practice is, that variation between thick and thin, pooling, no pooling, How much paint can I get on my brush? How skinny can I make one line? That's our homework. Because you will find the better you get at being able to lift your brush, the more you'll be able to develop actual shapes that look, more and more like leaves or petals. See what I mean? And then suddenly we've got a fern growing right in front of us. And that's just, I haven't even dipped back in. That's just from getting a good amount of paint and a good amount of water and being able to lift up our brush in enough time. So that's what I want you guys to practice.
Can you just let them know what's in the mini kit again?
Sure, let's go through the mini kit. So you're gonna get your trusty paint palette, okay? You're gonna get an ink. You're going to get a waterproof marker. You're going to get watercolor paper. You're going to get a pack of brushes. So all of the brushes, I think was there 6 brushes? 5 brushes? 6 brushes? 3 of the water brushes. You are going to get the 2 stamps. So there's one. We didn't even do the other stamp tonight. So you guys can at home this week too, if you wanted to make another card out of the roses, I'd love to see that as homework. That'd be great. You're going to get the palette, the sticky dots to make the cards, the card bases and the envelopes, the pin, the candy, and the printouts, of course, to do the night sky for the next lesson. So the mini kit is still great. You're going to be able to do almost everything. You're just missing the portrait pad and the watercolor crayons, and you won't get 6 of these markers. You'll just get 1. Basically, because we have to spread them out because they're just sold out. We can't get any more. We always try to get enough stuff in. And if anyone who's done our events before, like, you got to sign up. I know I always say, like, sign up fast because it will sell out. They always sell out. And then everyone's like, but I wanted it. And I'm like, well, we're trying to get more. And then it's, we don't want to leave anyone out, but we also are warning you, they always sell out. So we do have some of these left. So, and then maybe after the mini kit, there will be an even minier kit. The miniest kit. Where we're just like, here, have just a palette and one ink. Yeah, and a brush. Exactly. We'll just try to talk about diluting it, right? Anyway, this was fun tonight. I hope you all had fun. Is there any more questions before we go?
Just Christine's asking, can you go over how to use the plastic palette?
Sure. So I just used it kind of willy-nilly tonight. I put some paint in it, and then I didn't put some paint in it. I put some water in it. I also even colored inside of it. So you can, if you wanted to, instead of wasting your watercolor paper, I wouldn't waste my watercolor paper all the time with a palette like this. I would use this palette and just color in it. And then you can literally pick up the color directly out of the palette here. Because you literally, as long as you're melting it and mixing it with water, that's what I would use the palette for. And then when you're mixing colors, like I did in the middle here, when I was trying to make the brown, I added a bit of the yellow from this palette with the green. So I added the green here and then brought in some of that orange and some of that yellow and then mixed it together to get that brown. So you're using the palette for whatever you need it for. And when you're done, you can just leave it if you want. It will kind of stain up a little bit, or if you're totally done and you don't think you want to use those colors again, you can wash it off. But the great thing about watercolors is, like, for example, this pink is already dry. You can just reactivate it with some water so that, it doesn't go to waste. So if you're coming back to something similar the next day, you might just want to leave it. But if you want to start fresh, take it to the sink, rinse it out, wash it out, do it like you're doing the dishes, a little bit of soap, and most of it should come right off. Any other questions?
Is most sketchbook paper watercolor paper?
No, sketchbook paper is not watercolor paper. It will say watercolor paper. It won't say mixed media. No, It won't say sketch. It won't say art paper. It will say watercolor paper if it's watercolor paper. So you really have to make sure it's watercolor paper. Otherwise, you'll get a hole in it and it'll start to pill. And you can try it out if you want. It won't work. You won't get the same gradient of color. It'll kind of pool in one spot, or all the pigment will just stick in one area. It'll go through and then you'll eventually get a hole in the paper, or it'll start to pill. So you want to look for watercolor paper, and we can put a link, like an Amazon link in the chat if that's helpful. But watercolor paper, and I'm not too worried if it's hot pressed or cold pressed. You'll probably find cold pressed. That's totally fine. And I wouldn't spend tons and tons of money on it. Probably around $20 for a pad. If you can find a pad that's less than $20, good. But around $20 is probably what you're looking at for, 25 sheets or something like that. It's not cheap. It's not as cheap as regular paper, but it's not insane either. But I would recommend not doing this on a full sheet. I would recommend doing it on like quartering out your paper. If you're ordering it and it comes, cut it so that you practice on smaller sheets, because like I did here, I kind of took up most of the sheet and then this is kind of left. So quarter it out. Any other things before we're going?
Angela just ordered her mini kit. She's very excited.
Yay, Angela. I'm glad you're here. That's so great. Well, I hope you enjoy it for sure. And don't wait if you want the mini kit. You don't want the mini your kit. So you've been warned. You've been warned. What do we have coming up this week? I don't know. We're going to pack those subscription boxes. I can tell you that much. Mm-hmm. That's on the docket for tomorrow. And we'll be back here next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, for our backgrounds class, class 2. 7 p.m. What time did she say? I said 8 p.m. Oh. Sometimes stuff just comes out of my mouth. 7 p.m. Eastern. We will send around the email. So if anyone's just registering tonight, you can still watch for free if you remember. But if you register for the free class, and you can still do that, then you'll just go on the email list where we send you the link to remind you. And then you'll have the link for when you need to go back to the class. So that's all that the registering for the free class does. We're not like selling your info to someone. You're going to get weird calls or anything. It's just to remind you about the class. All right, that's it. Anything else? You can leave me questions here on Facebook or on YouTube. I hope you'll like and subscribe, because we're always putting all kinds of crafty stuff up. And here, right there, Jennifer, at Jennifer_Tryon. That's my Instagram handle. And so I'm always, whatever crafty adventure I'm up to that day, I'm posting on Instagram. So please follow me there too. All right, we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.